It's 9 o'clock, and we are calling to order the Planning Director's hearing of June 22nd, 2022. My name is Robert Manford, and I'm the hearing officer for today's agenda on behalf of and delegated by the Director of Planning, Building and Code Enforcement, Mr. Christopher Burton. This meeting is being held via Zoom conference call due to the COVID-19 crisis. Members of the public may participate by following the instructions listed on page 2 of the agenda. If you would like to provide public comments, you have 2 methods to do so. First, for participants who joined electronically and have audio input available on their computer or smartphone, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom during the agenda item that you would like to speak to, or click *9 on your phone. Please keep your raise hand feature on until planning support staff identifies your turn to speak. During the meeting, please call 408-535-3505. Again, the phone number is 408-535-3505, or email planningsupportstaff@sanjoseca.gov. Again, it's planning support staff, one word, at sanjoseca.gov. And identify your name that is listed on Zoom, the phone number that you like to call into Zoom with, and what item or items that you like to comment on. All members of the public will remain on mute until the individual identifies they would like to speak and they are unmuted. Planning support staff will identify you by name when it's your turn to speak. At that time, you will be unmuted and can provide comments for the allotted period of time. If you exceed your allotted time, you may be muted so we can move on to the next speaker. Please note the following. I will identify each project as described on the agenda. For those items on the consent calendar, I'll ask if anyone wishes to speak on the item. If a separate discussion is warranted, I will move the item to the public hearing portion of the agenda. If a separate discussion is not needed, the item will remain on consent calendar for approval. For those items listed on the public hearing, I will ask staff to provide a brief report. The applicant or their representative who wishes to speak on the item will have up to 5 minutes to speak and should identify themselves by stating their name for the record. After the applicant or their representative has spoken, any member of the public who wishes to speak on the item may provide testimony for up to 2 minutes per speaker, either for or against the project. All speakers are required to state their name for the record. Following comments from the public, the applicant may make additional remarks for up to 5 minutes. I will then close the public hearing and I may ask staff to answer questions, respond to comments made by the applicant or the public, or further discuss the item. I will then take action on the item. If you challenge these land use decisions in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at this public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to this public hearing. The planning director's actions on the agenda items will be final when the permit is signed and mailed, unless the permit or the environmental clearance determination is appealed. The planning director's actions on the permits are appealable in accordance with the requirements of Title 20 of the city's municipal code, which is the zoning ordinance. The planning director's actions on the environmental review for the permits under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, are separately appealable in accordance with the requirements of Title 21 of the city's municipal code, which is environmental clearance. Before we begin, I want to remind members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only. Public speakers will not engage in a conversation with the hearing officer or staff. The hearing officer, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the director hearing will now come to order. So we'll begin today's order of business with the matter of deferrals. Any item scheduled for hearing this morning for which deferral to a future meeting date is being requested will be moved to this portion of the agenda and considered on the matter of deferral. I will identify any items to be deferred and ask for comments from the audience. I do not see any items listed under deferral. However, I'll still go ahead and open the public hearing for deferral. Does staff or anyone in the audience wish to defer any item that is on this agenda today? Support staff, do we have any raised hand, or has anyone contacted you?
Hearing officer, I'm not seeing any hands and no contact.
Thank you, sir. Just wait for a few moments. If we do not hear from anybody, then we move to the next agenda item. Okay, hearing or seeing none, the matter of deferral is now.
Hearing officer, I'm seeing one hand.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Mike, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Director, I just had a question. There's a subject that's coming up later on the agenda relative to the Wade warehouse. And since you're asking about if there's any call for deferrals, I did, in a letter I submitted this morning, ask if there were matters that could not be resolved based on staff's recommendation, if a deferral could be determined at that time during the hearing. It's just a matter of process. Is that something that we have to bring up now as a possibility, or can that be handled during the agenda item?
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, and thanks for your inquiry. Since the matter is already under the public hearing, we can wait, and then when we get there and all the issues are addressed, or when we hear everything, then a decision will be made whether it can be deferred or not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Support staff, do we see any other hands raised, or have you been contacted?
Hearing officer, it looks like no other hands.
Okay, thank you. Again, the matter of deferral is now closed, and we move on to the consent calendar items. There will be no separate discussion of individual consent calendar items, as they are considered to be routine and will be considered in one action unless an item is moved to the public hearing calendar for separate discussion by the hearing officer. The public may comment on the entire consent calendar and any items removed from the consent calendar by the hearing officer. If you wish to speak on one of these items, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or click *9 to raise the hand to speak. We do have two items under the consent calendar. These are item number 3A, HP 22-001. It's a historic preservation permit to allow the demolition of the roof of existing rear additions, non-contributing windows, and other minor elements, and the construction of a 335 square foot second floor addition, a 49 square foot first floor addition, and a new rear porch on a city landmark, which is HL 21-002 in the Hanchet and Hester Park Conservation Area on a 0.25 gross acre site located at 1169 Magnolia Avenue within the City's Council District 6. Staff recommendation is the consideration of the CEQA exemption and approval of the historic preservation permit. Does staff or anyone in the audience wish to speak to this item? Support staff, do we have any raised hand?
Not seeing any, hearing officer.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item under the consent calendar, which is item number 3B, PD 21-014, stroke ER 21-139. It's a planned development permit to allow the replacement of an existing surface parking lot and the removal of 32 trees, 1 ordinance size and 31 non-ordinance size, for the construction of a 3-story, approximately 115,986 square foot parking garage with approximately 377 vehicle parking spaces on an approximately 1.84 gross acre site located on the southwest corner of Stockton Avenue and Emery Street, specifically 795 Stockton Avenue, within the City's Council District 6. Staff recommendation is the consideration of the addendum to the Bellarmine College Preparatory Master Plan Mitigated Negative Declaration in accordance with CEQA and approval of a planned development permit. Does staff or anyone in the audience wish to speak to this item? Support staff, do we have any raised hand or has anyone contacted you by phone?
Not seeing any raised hands still.
Thank you. So hearing or seeing none, both items under the consent calendar, which are item number 3A HP 22-001 and item number 3B PD 21-014/ER 21-139 are hereby approved. Again, both items under the consent calendar are hereby approved, and I'll wait for the screen to show the approval. Thank you, support staff. We will now move on to the public hearing portion of this agenda. We have one item on the public hearing, and that's item number 4A, HP 22-002. It's a historic preservation permit to allow the demolition of the remaining brick walls of the Wade Warehouse City Landmark, HL 92-67, which was destroyed by fire on a 0.39 gross acre site in the part of Alviso National Register Historic District, located at 1641 El Dorado Street, within the City's Council District 4. Staff recommendation is consideration of the secret exemption and approval of the historic preservation permit. Now I'll call on the project manager, Ms. Dana Peak, to make a brief presentation.
Thank you, Director. I just have a couple of comments. The Historic Landmarks Commission considered the application for the HP permit on June 1st, 2022, and recommended several amendments to the draft conditions of the HP permit that were presented to the HLC. The following additional conditions were recommended by the HLC: to recover and store, in accordance with the stated permit conditions, any historic bricks that were moved from the site, mark at least one corner of the building, the warehouse building footprint to commemorate the existing building, and to reuse the salvaged bricks in the future new development on the site, regardless of the materials used in that new construction, and potentially rebuild the facade elements of the warehouse building if there are enough salvaged bricks. These recommendations have been incorporated into the draft HP permit and are indicated in track changes underlined in the draft permit. It should be noted that the HLC voted 4-0 to approve the motion, with one commissioner absent. This information was not included in the posted draft HP permit. I would like to address condition 5 regarding memorializing the existing footprint of the historic warehouse. Currently, the submitted plans do not specify the dimensions of the existing warehouse or where it's located on the site. Staff recommends that sheet D1, the site demolition plan, be revised to include the dimensions of the warehouse building and its setbacks from the boundary lines, so the corners can be appropriately memorialized in the future. That memorialization is not recommended to occur immediately because the site will likely be graded when redeveloped, and that memorialization would be lost when the site is graded. For the record, 2 pieces of correspondence are received for this hearing item, one from the applicant and one from Preservation Action Council San Jose, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Peak. Is the applicant available? And if so, do they wish to speak on this item?
The applicant has his hand up. James Salata.
Support staff, can you please unmute them or promote them?
James, please unmute yourself.
James, can you please unmute yourself and speak?
I'm speaking. Nobody can hear?
Yes. Then support staff, he has 5 minutes to speak.
So you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. I submitted a response after speaking to the owner And apparently, I guess our response to the conditions of approval aren't being taken into account at this time. Is that correct?
The letter was forwarded to the hearing officer for consideration.
And what happens at that point?
Can you provide a brief summary of your response? That is why it's your turn to speak now and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, so we agreed that, we submitted a plan to build a monument, but basically, I sort of put a philosophical bent on the response, and that is, along with the owner's comments about his inheriting the building, his grandfather had bought it in '68, and some other items in there to rebut some contention out there that they let the building burn down on purpose to make money. So you'll see in that correspondence that he was 2 days from closing escrow when the building burnt, and they would have taken it as is. So I think that document's pretty important. Some of the items that are in the conditions of approval are not rational. People don't understand what it's going to take to segregate the bricks. The bricks are deemed historic. I don't know what that means. I thought long and hard about this because in San Jose, we a lot of times have these 20/20 hindsights about preservation instead of taking a proactive stance. Something happens and then all of a sudden everybody's up in arms about a building or a structure that either burned or becomes demolished, when if we were more proactive, things might have been done differently. In this case, this building was basically 4 walls made out of common brick with some bricks that made the lettering for H.G. Wade, which is really, really neat. A feature unusual, I believe, in California. I'm not sure, certainly in San Jose. And after the building burnt, the only thing I could think of was to develop a monument using those bricks. And I hired Page and Turnbull, and I said, look, if you can think of something else we could do besides that, I'm open to it, but I can't think of anything. So they went out and looked at the site, and they agreed that that was about the only thing left. We cleaned up the site and got rid of the garbage, stabilized the house, and cleaned the trash and cut the weeds. And so we thought that was a fairly decent way to memorialize the building. And then these other people seemed to be really upset, and they added these other items, and it felt very punitive, not rational. Of course, we don't want to lose a historic building, but at the same time, I don't believe people understood the condition of that building. The fact that the bricks were, many of them, probably 30 to 50% are deteriorating in place, including the interior weiss, making it basically unfeasible to gunite that building and save it in place. It had to take all the bricks apart. So I believe that if we had all been together on a rational approach and looked at that building the way it was, maybe the outcome would have been the same. Maybe we would have decided together as preservationists, and if I was hired by the building owner some time ago, that the way to save that building, i.e. memorialize it, would be to build a monument. I think this thing has gone full circle. It's unfortunate, but I don't believe that the requirements are rational and logical. And I can go through that with folks on another time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one follow-up question for you, Mr. Salada. When you say you don't believe that the requirements are rational, are you talking about the requirements being suggested after HLC meeting or some other requirements?
Yes, sir. The condition of approval, we rebutted, we agreed in our letter to certain items, including moving the monument and making it the existing monument out front, the plaque, making a new monument for that, to build the H.G. Wade monument was proposed in our plans, but to try to save what they call historic bricks, and I don't know what that means. These are common brick. You're trying to control the architecture of a future building, which makes no sense to me. And in addition to that, we did a time cost study of cleaning bricks, and because they're mixed in with the bricks that are deteriorated, it's not. And I hate to use this, but it's true. It's way out of the bounds of financially feasible to do this, to save those bricks. And it should be at the owner's discretion. He owns those bricks. I think in good faith on the monument, and which is going to be hand disconnection and a lot of labor in itself, and would number all the letters on the plan so that we can put the H.G. Wade letters back exactly the way they were before. I think it's a good option, and I don't believe people that are asking for these things realize what they're asking for, because they're not in this business, and it seems to be reactionary rather than rational.
Thank you, Mr. Salada.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more speakers? Support staff?
Hearing officer, I'm seeing multiple hands. Jan, please unmute yourself.
There is one hand raised, actually two hands.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Ms. Jensen, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Jan Jensen. I'm a direct descendant of Harry Wade. I represent the family of Harry Wade and Harry George Wade. We have reached out to James Salada, Garden City Construction, Bricklayers Union in the Bay Area, San Jose State University Engineering Construction Department, Cabrillo College Engineering Construction Department, eClampus Vitus, who are all interested in helping preserve part of this building. I'm encouraged that the most important section of the wall is going to be saved and restored at some point. The house that is still there is one of the first mail order homes bought in 1850 from Harry George Wade from New England, and it came around the Cape Horn. It is a prefab shipped home. I know there was talks about trying to save that house as well. So our family is in support of at least saving the H.G. Wade section of the warehouse and possibly the home. And we'd be willing to help supply family history to an interactive monument. We hope the wall is restored sooner than later, and not just forgotten about. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Do we have any more speakers?
Mike, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I believe Jim Salada's letter and PAC San Jose's letter should be considered before a decision on this matter is made and fully addressed. PAC readily acknowledges the involvement of Garden City Construction and architectural firm Page and Turnbull as being a very good first step towards bringing order to what is basically chaos. Their involvement has produced a glimpse of a vision for what a demolition, salvage, and reuse strategy that would pay tribute to something that is a treasure that has been lost. We appreciate staff's notation that the conditions shall run with the land and be binding upon the owner and subsequent owners of the subject property and all persons who use the subject property for use conditionally permitted. But we remain unclear, like in condition 5, when and where the Wade Warehouse commemoration wall will be built. PAC believes that if a HP permit is approved, the commemoration wall described and pitched should be built as soon as possible, not when ownership is transferred. PAC also believes that the only reasonable location for the wall from a preservation perspective is the same location the wall exists today. This should be prominently visible to the public in the street and keeping original orientation and context. PAC believes that the true spirit of San Jose's historic preservation ordinance should be rebuilt in place if possible. Clearly, this would require a lot of work and additional materials, new materials added. I'd also like to add that PAC believes that the city should require the addition of laser scanning of this facility, as was done for the Kelly House after it burned. There is actually a tremendous amount of information that can be captured even in the condition that the building is in right now. PAC has a grant from the county to pay for this, so this shouldn't be a burden on the developer.
Thank you, Mike. Support staff, do we have any more hands? I think I see one.
Gail, please unmute yourself.
Yes, check.
This is Gail Frank, and I understand that the Wade Warehouse bricks must be taken down and removed. And I agree that a smaller monument is the best way to memorialize the Wade Warehouse, but I have concerns. The monument must mark the actual location of the warehouse by placing the monument in the same orientation and location as the warehouse facade. It should include an example of the attractive arches in the original warehouse. Second, who will oversee this project to ensure it actually is completed in a timely manner? What will be the time frame? I fear that it will stall for years and then be forgotten. It needs to be built now, not later. In addition, the Wade Warehouse stands immediately adjacent to the Wade Warehouse on this parcel. This historic house, circa 1851, likely one of the earliest kit houses shipped to California, remains in poor, vulnerable condition. Many of us preservationists are concerned that it too will be destroyed by fire or further neglect. It is not stabilized or secure and sits vacant. What are the plans for this landmark structure going forward? How can we ensure it will be preserved as part of the important El Viso Historic District? How can we enforce the vacant building ordinance to make certain the owner does not allow this historic resource to also burn down or to fall down, just like the historic Tilden grocery store in the El Viso Historic District? Owners of historic resources must take responsibility for their property and should not be rewarded for their negligence. The city of San Jose has seen this happen too many times in the past, and it has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. And I think, James, did you want to say anything again? I see your hand up. Mr. Salada?
Yes, just in regards to Gail's comment on the house, which is not part of this permit. When I first, when the owner first asked us to come out and clean the place up, we completely took all the trash out of and around the house and very, very securely boarded it up with special screws. So it has been secure since we were out there months ago.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Support staff, do we have any more hands raised?
Hearing officer, I'm not seeing any anymore.
Okay, so hearing or seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this item. And staff and Dana specifically, would you want to address any of these issues, especially by Packers J, and how that is being handled?
I mean, yeah, I guess I can, I'll start with Jim if that's
That is
in
fine. Yep.
your favor.
Sure.
The majority of the conditions, and I believe the ones that he's most concerned about, are the cleaning of the bricks and the categorizing of the bricks as being illogical. You know, those were actually taken from standard conditions that Page and Trimble uses. So there's nothing illogical or out of the ordinary in terms of professional practice for that. The majority of the conditions that are in the HP permit were drafted prior to going to the Historic Landmarks Commission hearing. Flexibility from the Historic Landmarks Commission recommendations was added to the permit. If there's enough bricks and it's feasible, then there might be potential to reconstruct something on the site. But there are certainly, it's not locked in. There's no, requirements that's going to interfere with any development. So that just adds flexibility. With regard to the other comments, the building burned, and there is while the building has remained since it burned about a year ago, there's no guarantee that a wall won't fall or additional bricks won't fall. So there is a need to do something with it. I think it's been agreed upon that the memorial wall is reasonable in terms of the location, and requiring something now, it doesn't make any sense. It's not practical because when the property changes hands and is developed, there will be issues with regard to access, utilities, infrastructure. If a wall is constructed now or anything else is constructed now, there will be interference with that. So there really isn't any way to pin that point at the moment. What staff is suggesting is that prior to the issuance of the HP permit, the dimensions and location and setbacks of the warehouse building the plans be amended to add that to that, so we know where the building exactly was located. And we have reference to that for what might occur in the future.
Okay. So in essence, what is being done now is a precautionary measure to avoid any further damage, or is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Salat, I have a quick question for you. I'm a little curious. You keep making reference to the owner. Is there a reason why they didn't come to the hearing?
They're not really familiar with how these things work, and they felt more comfortable that I handled it. And we had a pre-meeting yesterday and talked these things over, talked obviously through the rebuttal to the conditions of approval, but it's not, I don't think they're comfortable. It's just not their kind of thing. The other, when Dana also talked about segregating those bricks, I'd like to explore that further, not today, because it's a Herculean task. Usually they would high grade face brick, not common brick. So I'm not sure where that information is coming from, but so you're asking to separate 1 out of 3 bricks, throw them aside, and then set up some kind of color range for all. I just, honestly, it's, I don't see how we would even want to attempt to do that.
Well, perhaps there's a misunderstanding about the separation of the color range. I think with color, we're only talking about the red bricks and the gray bricks. That's it.
That's not been.
There doesn't need to be a gradation of color or anything of that shape or form.
Okay, well, that's interesting because
so Mr. Salada, I mean, just as I noted earlier on, if we could refrain from kind of going back and forth, that's fine.
Okay, no problem.
I've also had staff.
No problem.
Sure. And I do have a question for Ms. Jensen. Support staff, can you, thank you. Ms. Jensen, I know
Yes.
you are a family member. You mentioned that you've contacted San Jose State University engineers and other people who may be. Did you provide any written documentations from those entities to the city, or have you done that yet?
No, because I did not know where we were going with this.
Oh, okay, but you have.
I just talked
kind
to
of
them,
agreement.
saying, that thinking about saving the house? Would they take it on as a possible, project for their school, And it just was an idea I had to try and, open it up to community for saving a historic landmark. I work at Cabrillo College in Aptos, and I've talked to their construction energy management group. And, as far as it's just a conversation, I at one time asked if the house could be, moved to the San Jose, History Park. And we just don't want to see it moved out of Alviso because that's where it belongs.
Thank you. So another question of significance to staff. This item went to the Historic Landmark Commission, and they have made a recommendation to the planning director to approve this. So from that time that it went to Historic Landmark Commission until now, has there been any significant changes to the conditions of approval? And if so, why? And if they haven't, I totally understand. And I'm asking this question because of the feasibility issues and the fact that some of these, the applicant's representative is saying some of these don't make sense and all that. Yeah.
The only changes have been the additions that the commission recommended. If it's the will of the hearing officer, this item could be deferred to clarify conditions. But there has been no changes beyond the ones that I mentioned.
Okay. So thank you. So these are exactly the recommendations of the Historic Landmark Commission. Thank you. So I think I do have enough information now. First and foremost, I know for sure that our Historic Landmark Commission, their opinion is an expert opinion based on case law and me following them. And when their decision was made, definitely they had to be advised by a city attorney to stay within their lane and ensure that as the item that is before them is what they are supposed to make a decision on. And I'm inclined to go with that because it was a thorough deliberation. Some of the issues being raised by the commenting parties here who were present had the opportunity to raise this. But there was a thorough deliberation. Staff has thoroughly reviewed this, and I believe that there is enough information. This is something that is adequate, is doable. And the fact that if nothing is done, there will be further damage to the environment and also important historic resources. So I don't think there should be any changes based on the information before me and thoroughly following the review process. So on that note, I will go ahead and approve staff recommendation and move on with that. So item number 4A, HP 22-002 has been approved. And this concludes the planning director hearing for June 22nd, 2022. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 9:38 a.m. Thanks again, and please be safe out there.